In Nigeria, elections often draw significant public interest and participation, but face persistent challenges with transparency, fairness, and logistics. Voter turnout remains a pressing concern as many citizens, particularly in the rural communities, encounter difficulties, especially people living with disabilities, accessing polling stations. The spread of misinformation, especially through social media, continues to erode trust in the electoral process, making voter education an uphill battle. Allegations of electoral fraud and violence during elections further deepen public skepticism, raising critical questions about the system's credibility and inclusivity. These issues are not unique to our country. They resonate with challenges faced by the United States, where measures like early voting, cybersecurity have been implemented to enhance electoral integrity. However, Nigeria still grapples with delays in election materials, logistical inefficiencies, and the pervasive influence of money in politics. How can Nigeria address these deep-seated issues to restore and increase trust and ensure transparency? There are lessons to learn from global some electoral best practices, or do Nigeria's unique challenges demand homegrown solutions? These questions highlight the urgent need for further exploration and action. I am Ezen Wanwagu. Welcome to Electoral Reform Half Hour on NTA News 24, Abuja. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa with support from MacArthur Foundation. And to introduce our guests, Emmanuel Njoku is the Director of Democracy and Governance at Connected Development Code, with over 15 years of experience in advocacy campaigns focused on electoral reforms, civic education, constitutional amendments, and policy reforms. His work promotes youth participation, gender inclusion, and access for people with disabilities in electoral processes and governance. Emmanuel has played key role in developing INEC's youth engagement strategy, gender policy, and disability framework on access. He's actively participated in electoral reforms over the past decade, contributing to the 2022 Electoral Act. He leads CODE's election observation missions in Nigeria and internationally, with experience observing elections in Kenya, the United States, and Nigeria. It's my extreme pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you, Ezenwa, for having me.
Excellent. You were in the US.
Sure, I was.
Were there takeaways that you think are important for us to look at as we begin to explore what is that value that we can take away from those days you spent in the United States?
Yeah, there are takeaways, but it's not a copy and paste kind of arrangement. These things are, they differ. But then there are takeaways, definitely there are takeaways, but there are things we can always take and that will complement our electoral laws and electoral frameworks that will also work to also better our electoral processes. Yeah, sure.
So what are those things?
Oh, yeah, okay. So let's get straight into it. First of all, the first thing I observed in the U.S. elections is how the process allows for participation in voting. Every person who wants to vote, the process makes it possible for you to vote. Unlike our situation in Nigeria here, there are lots of people who want to vote, especially when you work with young people. In my office, there are a lot of young people who are excited about voting, but by the time they engage in the process from the point of voter registration to getting your temporary voter's card, to now coming back to get your permanent voter's card. And then you know that young people are usually mobile. They change jobs, they get married, they move from place of NYS to another place. So when people also move from their location to another location, as bad as within the same city, you move from, let's say you move from Gariki to Wuse to, you know, it's so difficult for them to be able to transfer their PVCs and their polling units. All of these things adds up to the challenges that make young people not to be able to vote. So I go straight to using the 2023 general election that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu won. If you look at the margin of victory between the APC and the PDP, I think it's about 2 million thereabouts. And if you look at the number of people, for one, that didn't vote, that wanted to vote, that eventually got their TVCs, that didn't get their PVCs, that also got their PVCs but couldn't just go to vote because of the whole security architecture of shutting down the nation. People are not able to move. People who have transferred that couldn't vote. And then more importantly, election workers coming from election observers who go to the field to vote. And from INEC data, I think there were about 1.1 million people who participated in the election voting. About Nigerian police alone had about 400. No, the security agencies had about 400 personnel. If you put the total number of election workers from civil society, election observers, security agencies, the media, the journalists, INEC staff as well that didn't vote, there were over 2 million people that didn't vote. So that number and that population is actually enough to impact the margin of lead with which the president won the election. So
there are assumptions that are coming out from what you're saying. The number one would be that every police person who participated.
No, I didn't say police. I said security agencies.
No, let's say security agencies will vote. You know, voting is not compulsory.
Yeah.
That it's very important. Two, the youth are not a homogeneous category. As in urban youth, you know, youths who live in the communities, Muslim youth, Christian youth, Yoruba youth, Igbo youth. So when we use these terms, I want you to unpack it, because sometimes we think one cap fits all.
So when I said margin of lead, I didn't say youths. I spoke about the people that participated in the election workers.
Workers, okay.
And I talked about civil society and election, that's mostly election observers. I talked about media, the journalists. I talked about the INEC staff. I talked about security agencies who were drafted to do the work. I didn't talk about you. These are people that were drafted who usually are posted or usually work in areas where they were not registered to vote. All of this, when I talked about youth, I talked about young people who are enthusiasts, who are election enthusiasts, who wanted to vote, but the process of getting their PVCs or registering to vote was a challenge for them to vote. So there are two different things, trying to unpack it.
96 million voter population. 12 million added to that voter register in 2022. You think that's not significant?
No, so the data I'm talking about particularly is looking at the margin of lead and looking at the number of election workers. So I'm talking about two things, actually. I'm talking to unpack it. I'm talking about the bureaucracies, the process, the challenge of registering to, the stress,
the
bottlenecks of registering to vote, transferring your vote, and voting on election day. That's one thing. Then secondly, the number of election workers who do not get to vote, because on election days, like myself, most times you walk outside where you are registered to vote. All of those things is what causes the kind of voter party we have. But when I compare it closely with the US election, to bring it so I can put it in context,
yes.
The system allows any person who desires to vote will vote. Because one, for you that are an election worker, I met some of the election judges. So they're like the presiding officers, the poll clerks. They call them election judges. And you ask them, so you are here, is this where you are registered to vote? Have you voted? They tell you, yeah, they voted 2 weeks ago, 3 days ago, 7 days ago. So because you know you are going to work on election day, is not enough reason for you not to be able to vote.
There's a law in the National Assembly now, about early voting.
Yes, and that's where I was headed.
So what are you thinking about that? Is this something you want to support? What mechanisms? Because even the US, where you just returned from, a few days to that election, they went and burned
Very, very, when we talk about, like I always know, when you talk about isolated issues, it's not enough to judge an election based on that. And like we've seen in Nigerian election, like the
But
2023.
we do that in Nigeria.
We did that, but in 2023 general election, I always tell people that, it was sad and disappointing that the IREV failed at the point when Nigerians wanted to participate the most in following the election result management process. It was disappointing. But however, if you look at the overall election, looking at how many sitting governors who ran for Senate, who typically would have strode into the National Assembly, I think there are about 27 both sitting governors and former governors around for that election, but less than 9 of them or 8 of them were able to win. Typically, if not for the BVAS, the biometric accreditation, and the IREV that worked to an extent, I tell you that many of those sitting governors would have been able to stroll in. So my point is that I wouldn't want us to use isolated issues.
I just brought that, but go ahead.
To judge an election. So, but beyond all of that, what the point I'm making is that early voting is good, but sadly, the U.S. election depends fully on data and trust. Why we should consider early voting for the over 2 million election workers. 2 million is a lot of numbers. 2 million can decide who wins an election. Like I put it in context with the 2023 general election, the number of votes that the APC president, our president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, won the election with, the number of election workers were about the number with which he won the election. So going forward, early voting is something we should consider. But however, all of these things are subject to reliable data, which is the advantage of the U.S. election. As a matter of fact, our process here is looks more kind of foolproof than what they have in U.S. Because typically most of the states in U.S., the people that come to vote don't come with any form of identification, because it's expected that at the point of you registering to vote, you would have provided some sort of identification for you to be in the database. But here, again, that for you to come and vote, you have to come with your PVCs. And that's an issue again. That's an issue that also affects voter apathy. In my opinion...
Voter turnout,
sorry. In my opinion, the PVC was really relevant, especially the plastic PVC, was really relevant when we were still doing the smart card readers. But as it is with the biometric accreditation using the BVAS, I feel that what is needed at this point is the person, which is your face and your fingerprint, for you to be authenticated, for you to be able to vote. So for that reason, I do not think that the bureaucracies and the complexities of getting the INEC produced PVCs is still necessary. It's a major impediment to voter participation in Nigeria. I think that going forward, once you've been able to register to vote, because what is needed is the barcode on the PVC. There is no need for that handshake. So I think that going forward, to enable participation, I feel that there's no need for all those plastic PVCs, which INEC says is costing them. Is it 500 naira, 1,000 naira? If someone gets the face, it costs you so much money. I think that going forward to enable voter participation, that we should be able to allow citizens to go ahead and print their PVCs as paper voters card. Because what is needed in the past, you must bring your PVCs. Your PVC that gives you access to be on the smart card reader for you to vote. But as it is now, you are the one needed with your face and your fingerprint. So for that reason, the cost of printing those plastic PVCs should be eliminated, as such that when you lose your PVC, or when it gets defaced, or when it gets lost, you should be able to walk into any business center at a cost of 50 naira or 100 naira, print another voter's card, not even PVC, a voter's card. That way, we will not see all those cases of seeing voter's cards hidden under sewages, hunters discovering PVCs, because politicians go ahead to buy people's PVCs, knowing that this is what is allowed. But if citizens are allowed to be able to print their voter's card, because it's just that barcode and the something code that is needed, that will also enable participation and remove all these bureaucracies and the impediments of registering temporary voter's card, getting permanent voter's card, and all of that stress. That's what
we're going to go on a small break. Electoral Reform Hour continues shortly. Just stay with us. Yeah, welcome back. It's still electoral reform, half hour on the NTA 24 news. We're going to have to pack a lot of things, because having you come to this program is difficult. But you are big on policy issues and reforms. Voter education, because that's basically what you've talked about. What are those innovative, things? Did you see any that you think can help our voter education initiatives?
Frankly, they're not doing anything different as regards voter education, because we had a meeting with the Maryland State Election Board, and again, that's another thing. The elections in the United States are not managed by some independent electoral commission. Instead, it is managed by a board of elections who are affiliated to political parties. So the election process literally is put in the hands of people who are affiliated to political parties, just that they have an understanding. If this state is run by, let's say, for instance, this state is, the minister is APC, if the board is supposed to be 5 members, 3 members will be APC, 2 will be PDP. Down to the poll clerks, the presiding officers, all of them, they make sure that it's political parties that nominate people that handle the election. I don't know why you are smiling. Anyways, I don't know why you are smiling. But I think what they do, because we asked that question, they are not doing anything differently. They go on TV, they engage citizens, but again, so that's why I say it's not a copy and paste kind of thing. You look at the level of interest, you look at the level of trust in the system. In Nigeria here, as you are aware, people do not exactly trust the process or trust the system. In 2023, a lot of Nigerians trusted the system. In fact, we saw Nigerians. I have a friend who lives in Austria, in Vienna. He flew all the way to be able to participate in the vote because the INEC chairman engaged viciously, making Nigerians to believe in the process. Sadly, and one of our biggest challenges in the whole electoral process is the result management, the result handling. So many people that trusted the process were literally disappointed when they could not follow the presidential election result collation as it was supposed to be, because the INEC chairman was big and he spoke heavily on the IREF.
I want us to make good use of this time. There are cyber security protocols, electoral infrastructure that can help strengthen this electronic voting. We are shouting electronic voting. We are all over the place. No. Now, why I was smiling when you were talking is the fluidity of our party system, where people, you are not very sure whether they are this in the morning or...
You can always buy them over,
No, not even the buy. You don't even know whether they are this in the morning or...
Exactly. No ideological differences.
But if you see a Republican, he's a Republican. If you see a Democrat, So, I want you to talk about if there are those protocols, cyber security protocols that can help our desire for electronic voting.
When they talk about electronic voting and diaspora voting, I'll be sincere with you. I don't think we are ready for it, because all of those things are subject to, trusted data. Do we have the data? And I saw in the National Assembly, I'm talking about diaspora voting. Who is diaspora? People get excited when we talk about diaspora voting, because sometimes we almost want to think that diaspora are people living in the United States, in United Kingdom, in Canada. People there are Nigerians living in Chad, in Niger. There are lots of people who we think are Nigerians. So do we have the data to be able to identify who is qualified to participate in diaspora voter? I also do not think we are ready for electronic voting. What we are doing, the way we are doing election, I think it is not completely bad, because one good thing INEC did with the IREF is that they are not just transmitting numbers or figures. They are snapping the result that was handwritten and signed by political party agents, and is transmitted. That way, it's not something you can... Uploaded, which is supposed to, be seen and followed by Nigerians on the IREF. That, I think, works. But on the part of the diaspora voting, frankly, we do not have that infrastructure or that data. It will cause so much confusion. Even our voter register at this point is being questioned, because we are all recommending that there should be some sort of audit to be able to clean up our voter register. And then because when you talk about diaspora voting, that means you need to expand the voter register to capture people living, and Nigerians are literally in every part of the world, and people who are not even. So how do you identify who is a Nigerian? Do you know how many people that are living in Nigeria? And I have a friend who was working somewhere who is a Cameroonian, but she has a, what do you call that stuff? NIN. She has a NIMSI, and she's in the country. So they will all be in the database. So I don't think we have reliable data to be able to talk about diaspora voting. Till we put that infrastructure in place, I think we should make the best use of what we have. But most importantly, as we go to prepare for the 2027 election, I think we should focus more on giving some legal backup to the IREV, so that, because that's one thing that elicited the interest of many Nigerians, both home and abroad. I think as we head to the 2023 election, amidst many recommendations that is put in the front burner around the electoral reforms, I think one that is key is around the IREV being backed by a law, as such that the presiding officer or the people who have the mandate to upload those results will upload it, and is backed by law. As such that if you do not upload it, all things being equal, you should be able to face the music of
the law. Is very clear about that. If you don't upload now,
that's what the law says.
No, but the challenge is that people don't get penalized because the law says
but
so.
People will not get penalized because even the Supreme Court judgment said that.
No, it's not. What I'm saying is that somebody has to complain. Somebody has to complain that this result from this polling unit.
But you will only, so like I always talk about people in Nigeria and our attitude and the act of indiscipline. I always say that we have the capacity to be disciplined, because Mr. Zenwa, once you land in any airport in the United States of America, typically you see yourself become disciplined. The problem is law enforcement. So these laws are there, but are they being enforced? Before even complaints, but what makes it enforceable is the law making it mandatory.
That's what I'm telling you, Iman, that the current law makes it mandatory for you to upload. It's there in the law.
So how many people?
So the challenge is this.
Political parties
political parties do not have organic party agents who, after the elections, can follow through, because most of them are transactional. And you know this as
I'm aware. I don't see political party agents as, I mean, they are transactional.
So if you, because sometimes we make it look, when people make that call, you say make it, the IREV is not a collation. It's not a collation instrument.
I agree.
And once it's not a collation instrument, then it is difficult. What we can put in the law is whether, that's why I'm asking you whether there is something you brought from the US that is helpful in making that technology collation process.
We do not have the infrastructure. So that's why I say we can't do copy and paste, because that's the reason why a lot of policies in Nigeria are not working. Because we typically go to these countries and do a copy and paste. What I think we should do, like I've said, is to improve voter participation and then strengthen the result handling process. You are saying that the IREV is not a collation platform. Before the election, that was not what Nigeria thought.
What people believed is different. This is where we're going to shut down for this today. This is where we draw the curtain on this episode of Electoral Reform Half Hour. We wish to especially thank Emmanuel Joku, Director of Governance at Code, for your contributions. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you.
We are here. Electoral Reform Hour is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa and supported by MacArthur Foundation. We are live every Saturday from 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a repeat broadcast every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. on same station. You can contact us on our social media handles showing on your TV screen. Thank you for watching. I am Ezenwa. Thank you so much.
Too much. That's the problem. You know too much.